Hi, it's Glenn here, and today we're in New York, and I'm with Elliot Felix, founder at Brightspot Strategy. Today we're talking all about workspace. Elliot, tell me about Brightspot.
Brightspot's awesome.
Brightspot's awesome. What do you do for people?
We improve how people experience the workplace.
Okay.
And that starts with helping them understand that the workplace is more than a space that you go to, but it's really something you experience. And that experience is made up of the places you're in, the people you're working with, the purpose you're trying to achieve, the projects you're working on, and it's really how all those come together that creates an experience for people.
So that's interesting. So we're starting to think of the workspace as not just a place you go to kind of get access to technology and colleagues, but as a place that you experience work.
Yeah. I think what makes it, the reason to think about it that way is that maybe this is a crazy idea, but spaces are for people. And people have experiences over time, right? They interact with their environment, with their colleagues, with their customers, with their clients, with their content or information. And so if you're thinking about space in sort of purely functional terms, then you're kind of missing the boat, because you're only satisfying, sort of a small part of what people need to feel connected to their company and to their colleagues and to their work.
So thinking about workspace as an experience, what are the sort of things that that we should be thinking about doing to make our workspaces different?
Well, I think it all starts with the fact that the space is there for people. It's there to help them do their work and help the company succeed, or the organization succeed. Could be a nonprofit, could be any sort of organization. And so I think the first part of that is understanding people. So understanding their needs. What are the different work styles? People work in different ways. Some people are more introverted. Some people are more extroverted. Some people focus need quiet to focus. Other people go to a coffee shop to focus, right? So first thing you need to do is understand your people. Then I think the next thing you need to do is understand their work. What are they working on? What kinds of projects? What's the sort of the rhythm of the work? And then you need to think about culture, right? Which kind of brings those things together: the people, the work, the culture. Think about the values, the purpose of the company, how what they're doing on a day-to-day basis relates to that, how that purpose is made visible. That's, I think, one of the interesting things about our work is the more digital it becomes, it tends to be a bit more hidden. So how do you make it more visible? What you're working on, who's working on it, what the results are, what your impact is. So when we think about an experience, it's really, of course, as a starting point, it needs to work for people. People need the tools and, right? It's the bottom of the Gallup pyramid. People need the tools and equipment to do their job, and they need to know what's expected of them, and these are kind of the table stakes. But to move beyond that, you need to think about the purpose. You need to think about the people and how they work, and what they're working on.
So that's interesting. I like that. So three things there. Think about the people,
the
work they're doing, and the culture of the business, the organization. I'd love to unpack those separately. So thinking about the people. So I know, like, a lot of the time I talk to leaders and HR people who are struggling still with thinking about their millennials, and do their millennials work in a different way. I notice a lot of our young staff work with headphones on, and some employers find that really difficult and worry, should they allow that or should they not? Do you think different generations want to work in different ways?
Well, I think there's lots of different studies and research about that, and I think the more important distinction is not from generation to generation, but it's person to person. And so whenever we're creating an experience for a company, helping them redesign or design their workplace experience, some kind of assessment is always part of that. So we're observing people, we're interviewing them, we're surveying them, and we're getting a sense of how and where people spend their time. And those are actually much more significant differences between the way you work and the way I work, let's say. I'm just using us as an example. We probably work pretty similarly, but those are much more significant than the differences from a generation to generation, because people have different work styles. They think in different ways. They process information differently. They may have different personality traits, and we tend to focus more on those than generational things.
So it's interesting thinking, people have different styles and are different, but the traditional corporate office, it treats everyone the same, doesn't it? Like, you either have these kind of cubicles, which we maybe see more in the States, or the kind of the acutely open plan office where every desk is the same.
Yeah, I think it suffers from two big problems. It's the one size fits all, assuming that everyone works the same way, so therefore they get the same space, and that space is assigned to them, limiting their choices, and also assuming that they have to do all their work from the office. And then the other thing is it assumes that that work is monotonous, and there's no variation in the work. Forget about person to person, but over the course of a day. And so I think one thing that organizations can do is understand their people and how and where they spend their time, and then better align their space with that. In fact, that's one of the things we do pretty routinely, is we compare the amount of time people spend doing things with the amount of space they allocate, and they almost never match up. I mean, before you do some kind of intervention. So a very common thing is people will spend more than half their day collaborating with others, but maybe only 10 to 20% of the workspace is devoted to collaboration. Right? So then everyone's running around saying, we don't have space to meet. Well, of course you don't, right? If you're spending half your day meeting, but only a quarter of your space is for meeting, it's not going to work so well. So providing more variety, providing more choice, giving people the flexibility to work where and when and how they need to, those are really sort of foundational ideas.
So it's interesting. So we got,
but still new for a lot of organizations.
Very new, very new. I mean, the majority of offices I go into, they're, everyone's got the same cookie cutter desk, and they feel quite wedded to it too. It's their desk. It's their kind of area of the world, marked out with their territory. So you've got different people have different styles, want to work in different ways. But even within the same person, different things they're doing, different work to be done. Maybe reading, writing, collaborating.
Sometimes you need a whiteboard to brainstorm at. Sometimes you need a place to focus where you can write something. Sometimes you need to be talking to someone else. Sometimes you're having coffee. Sometimes you want to be on a couch. Sometimes you want to be out of the office, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And reading, I mean, we're sitting here in the Brightspot study, so surrounded by books, which is interesting. And I guess this makes a cultural statement to me that it's okay to sit and read here. Whereas in many corporate offices I go to, there doesn't appear to be any suggestion that that's a worthwhile business activity. Reading.
Well, I think back to the earlier point about it's not just the space, it's also the culture. I think we see that a lot. We go to an organization that has lots of informal areas that are never used. And part of that, I think, is how you communicate. I think it's also how leadership leads by example. One of the things that I'm very careful about is when we created our office, first of all, we thought about it more like a home. So in the same way that you want lots of different places to live, we wanted lots of different places to work. So we have a study, we have a front porch, we have a backyard, we have a den.
And they're the names of your rooms?
Those are the names of the rooms, right. And they, the rooms have those characteristics, but we also created norms for the spaces as a company. Here's how we want to use this. And I'm very careful to kind of reinforce those norms. And so, I sit in the informal spaces and I get work done. I mean, lots of great work happens on the couch in our front porch. So, that's a place for visitors when we're waiting, when they just come in, but it's also a place for us to get work done.
It's interesting. I mean, I've worked in I guess, a space like this for a while,
yeah.
Which you helped us put together. But I know that there's such a lot of companies where they'd be worried about people sitting in a relaxed way,
yeah.
you know, and thinking, you know, are you working as hard if you're lounging on the sofa with your laptop as you might be sitting bolt upright in a chair? How do you help companies kind of come round to seeing the value in a more relaxed or more nuanced workspace?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and some of them have to do with space, and some of them have more to do with the company and the organizational design and the organizational culture. But I think from a space standpoint, one thing you can do is try things out. And I think we're a firm believer in prototyping and piloting things. I think most workplace change initiatives fail, you know, by some estimates, 70%. And I think part of that is because they make them big and slow and risky, or they don't involve people in the process, or they just think about space and they don't think about the kind of the services and the events and the programs and the people and the culture. So, you know, our approach is to really think about small pilots, you know, things you can quickly try out, create one informal area, see how it goes. And I think then in terms of the culture, I think you also have to sort of change the mindset and say, is this safe to try, right? As opposed to, we have to create the perfect informal collaboration area. Maybe it's you have to find something that's safe to try in terms of how you support an informal collaboration area. And you know, if it's a reversible decision, then you just change course if it doesn't work. You try it a little different way.
So that's interesting, because that's a very different way to think about workspace than I've thought of it before. Because I think we often think of workspace as a huge project, which is, you know, got a big budget attached to it. We do it once every 5 or 10 years.
Slow, costly, risky.
Yeah, you have to get the CFO involved in the, you know, there's a lot of capital expenditure, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And what you're suggesting is we could be making ongoing changes to our workspace in a much smaller, kind of just trying things out way without spending a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about continuous improvement in their organization. Why wouldn't they want their space to continuously improve or with them, or to help fuel that continuous improvement, right? I think you can put systems in place to monitor, you know, how you're doing. I think most companies have some kind of regular survey. Part of that survey you can ask about, you know, about space or the impact of space. We at Brightspot, we do a quarterly pulse survey that looks at, you know, things about the company, things about our space, things about our policies, all these kinds of things, and it helps us, you know, take the pulse. And that also gives us, if we change something, that gives us pretty immediate feedback on whether it's working or, you know, or whether it isn't. The other thing I was thinking back to your point about the, you know, people might be concerned. They see people sitting in informal areas. Are they working? You need to have ways of measuring your success other than the visual appearance of work, right? So if your indicator, if your like key performance indicator of productivity is, do people look like they're working hard? I think your success is going to be limited. You have to have other ways of knowing that.
I do get that a lot, though.
Be talking to people.
You get that. I've heard that so many times about home working. You know, if they worked from home, how would I know they were working? And that my answer is always, if you have no idea if you have no measurable output, maybe the job doesn't really exist. You know, maybe there's no need for that person to be at work at all.
Yeah, I mean, there should be measurable. You know, it could be qualitative and quantitative, but there should be some measurable outputs so that you can tell how good a job somebody's doing. I think about you know, there's a famous, or at least in my circle, is a famous Seinfeld episode where George figures out that the best way to show people that he's busy is to just look angry all the time. Right. And so, you know, the more angry he looks, the more convinced his boss is that he's working really hard and he's quite productive. So, you know, if that's how you're measuring performance, then workspace, I think, is the least of your problems.
Yeah. So we talked about how we need to think about individuals all are different.
Yeah.
Even within an individual, their day, as their day progresses, there's different types of work in the day.
Yeah.
And sitting kind of bolt upright at an office desk isn't necessarily the best way for all types of work to be done.
Yeah.
And we talked about the culture too. And then also this idea of it hasn't got to be a massive project, just do small things that, safe to try.
And those are actually the kind of the ingredients of how you change your mindset from thinking about workspace to workplace as an experience, because I think when you think about it over time, people have different moments in their day. They have different touch points. They interact with different with colleagues, with information, with customers, with space, and that's all part of a kind of a culture and an organization that has values and vision and purpose. Those are what get you from kind of this space is an inert container, a gray cube, to this is a workplace that has people in it and projects and variety, and it's there to fulfill a purpose, and it's something you can try and try out and continuously improve.
It's interesting. It kind of made me think.
You hit on the formula right there.
Thinking about the workplace to support people rather than contain people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If space is a container, then it's only fulfilling a very limited, I think, part of its mandate or its potential.
Yeah. So, give us some things we could do. Like if someone's watching this and thinking, well, wow, my workspace is pretty traditional.
Yeah.
How could someone who hasn't got a lot of money, can't move the office, can't just move to a cool part of town, hasn't got a Google, Facebook budget, is there anything small that they could do, try out that's safe to try?
Yeah. Well, that you hit on the first part is, have that as your mindset.
Yeah.
I think, the first thing we tell people when they have limited resources, which is kind of everybody, right? I don't think anybody has money to waste.
Yeah.
Is make sure you're not wasting money. And the way to do that is really two things. One is do some kind of assessment. So surveys, interviews, observations of people, so you have a sense of what the needs are. Because you really want to focus on A, things that are going really well. You don't want to mess those up. Maybe there's ways to amplify those. And B, figure out what the sort of pain points are and make sure whatever you're trying out is solving those, because it's going to take time, it's going to take money, and you want to make sure you have an impact. I think the other thing is find some quick things to try. I think three things come up pretty often in our work. One is showcasing the kind of the purpose and the people and the process. So find a wall where you can make these things more visible, where you can be really explicit about this is why we exist, this is our mission, this is our purpose, help people feel more connected to that. Then find a way to showcase the people that you have, pictures of them, pictures of events, outings, and the projects you're working on, the things that people are doing, and what they've accomplished, so it's more visible and people can be more connected to it. I think the other thing is that people have a lot of meetings, but generally work happens in more than a 60-minute increment. So maybe create a project space where some things can be left up on the wall. The project can have more of a visible presence, and maybe people kind of go to that space to work on the project, and there's a kind of an association between the space and the work. And a lot of creative ad firms, a lot of creative agencies work this way, where they assign space to projects rather than people. So that's something to try out to better support projects. And then I would also just experiment with variety. I mean, most organizations are lacking variety in their space. They're not giving people enough choice, acknowledging that there are different ways of working and there are different kinds of work throughout the day. So, maybe if everyone's seated, you have some standing desks. Maybe if all the meeting rooms are enclosed, you have some ones that are more open or more casual or more informal, that kind of thing. So I pick a wall to showcase your people, your purpose, your projects. Find some different ways of supporting projects other than, the kind of the ephemeral meeting room, and experiment with some more variety and choice.
Great advice there. It feels like we need to be a bit more flexible with our workspace, make it a bit more like home, maybe a bit more like school as well, actually, where it's kind of a fun place to be, and experiment more.
Yeah, I think those are all great ideas.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Elliot. It's really, really great to see you there today. So that's it for today. There's more from Elliot and more about Workspace in the Rebel Playbook for Employee Engagement, which you can buy now from Amazon or your favorite bookstore. And of course, there's a lot more interviews like this on the website, rebelplaybook.com. So signing out from New York, thanks ever so much. Thank you, Elliot.
You're welcome. Thank you.